Hey guys, and welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today's episode is all about training versus competing versus testing. Now, this is a subject which gets often confused by most people in their training unless they have a proper goal. And that's because sometimes a session, you're not too sure whether you're training or you're competing or you're testing. And you can be easily influenced and get carried up in other people's, say, grand scheme and grand plans. So, Ash, let's start with training. How do you feel in these type of things? Do you find as a coach that people often get carried away in other areas? And let's start talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think in CrossFit, this becomes more of an issue than in other styles of training, because one of the ways CrossFit grew popular was it does have a competitive aspect to it. The old school whiteboard culture where you do the workout, everyone puts their scores on the board, and it gives you motivation to push harder and improve faster, which I think is a real positive. And it's why a lot of people love CrossFit so much. It's because it gives you that competitive buzz that maybe you used to get from sport or you've never really had before. So it's a really great part of the training system, the methodology, and the community as well. There's a bit of shit talking when people beat each other, and makes it a lot more fun. I think where it becomes confusing is when it becomes all about competing in every session, in all aspects of the session. And that might actually become detrimental to the progress of your training. So there becomes a point where if you're competing all the time, you're actually missing out on gains from a long-term progress point of view, because there is a difference doing something to win versus doing something to improve. And I think a lot of people aren't quite aware of that distinction, which means they aren't getting as much as they could be or as much as they want out of class, for example.
Yeah, I definitely feel that when it comes into the class environment, it can be easily confusing, because especially if you do train with your mates and you can be, as you say, that shit talking happens. You want to beat them and stuff, which is great because it adds that competitive nature, especially if you don't compete at, say, a competition level. So it gives you that daily competition that you can do in class and, get one up over your mate. But at the same time, I guess you got to think about the trade-off of in competing against your mate today is all well and good. But if you're doing that every single session, who's actually going to get better? Because especially if you haven't told your mate you're competing against him, you're just you're doing that shady one, like, oh yeah, I'm going to beat him. You look out the corner of your eye and you see a slightly ahead in your last 2 minutes of workout. Right, I've got to move faster. And then he might be going on a completely different pace and saying, right, I need to get better at this movement today. And I'm going to pace myself to get better. So then who's the winner of that one in as you say, in the grand scheme? So I think we touch on training is in like, I guess when it comes to the three areas of training, competing, and testing, it does depend on the individual you are, as we just touched on there. So I guess if we have two kind of brackets of people, you have your fitness enthusiast. So we have someone that comes to class, they love training, they look to just be fitter in general and be healthier, which I guess where CrossFit, when it first come about, was all about that fitness enthusiast. This was, you're beating your mates, you're pushing yourself, you're also training, that one workout a day and just killing it really. And then you now have the new category of, say, competitive CrossFitter, say competitive person that goes to any level of competition. So that could be anywhere from your local competition all the way up to, say, the CrossFit Games. So you have those two kind of blanket people. So if we kind of discuss maybe what are your thoughts on the fitness enthusiast and like what would come from there?
I think for the fitness enthusiasts, if we were to generalize their goals, like you said, they want to become generally fitter. And I think enjoyment is a bigger part of their priorities. Like they do CrossFit classes because they're fun and they're social, and they do want to get fitter in a lot across all 10 key physical skills long term, but there's no burning bridge. They haven't got a competition lurking where they need to be at their best and peak. They just are looking to stay active, healthy, and fit for the long term. And for them, because they're not so bothered about absolutely maximizing their human potential, they can afford to just focus on the enjoyment side of things. So for the fitness enthusiasts, I think they would actually compete more often because they're happy to forego the progress of training, and vice versa. Like a competitive athlete would spend actually less time competing because they're so bothered about progressing as quickly as possible. So the training is more important to them. And it sounds counterintuitive, but if you think about football, for example, an amateur football player will just play Sunday league and that's all they do all week. They'll probably not train, they just turn up, play a match. So 100% of their football is competitive. But are they actually getting better? They're not practicing their skills and drills. They're not working on their set pieces. They just turn up, have a laugh, and enjoy it. So it's all about enjoyment rather than progression. Whereas a professional footballer, they might play 1 or 2 games a week. They're probably training every day, working on their fitness, working on their skills, constantly sharpening that saw. So you can see there the distinction between really trying to maximize your competitive output involves more training and actually developing your skills and your thresholds. And I think that's probably the summary of how you would distinguish between training and competing or testing, is that training is very much focused around a stimulus for progression and making you better as an athlete, whereas testing or competing is very result or outcome focused. So you're not worried about whether it's making you a better athlete, you're just worried about winning, or you're worried about getting your maximum score. If we're talking about testing like a 1 rep max or something, that's not how you get much stronger, but it's how you get that data point of how strong are you right now.
Yeah, I think that's really nice, because it's very easy to get carried away with, especially the testing side of things. I think even if you kind of come away from competing, if you take that bit away, and in a class environment of training and testing, they can be very blurred, because especially if you've got certain programs like strength programs where you have, say, like 5-3-1 as an example, right? It's really simple. So week 1 you do, say, 5s, when you build week 2 you got 3s, and in week 3 you've got 5 reps, 3 reps, and then 1 rep. Now this is all based off, say, percentages that you've previously hit and so forth, but it's at a sub-maximal load. So the goal of Wendler is to be progressive over time and to not always be PBing every 3 weeks, because otherwise you put that into a year, that's a hell of a lot of PBs that, is that really something that your body can handle? Every 3 weeks you're putting on, say, 5 kilos onto your back squat. I personally, I don't think that's going to happen. Exactly. So this is then where you have to understand then the training stimulus of that. And the training stimulus would be, cool, I'm going to work towards a number where it probably be still less than what I've ever hit, but I'm going to hit that rep so much better. Like, I'm going to hit my 95% like I've never hit it before. So I'm going to look better, tighter. So I know my 100% would have gone up without even touching 100%. And it's very easy to get carried away this is when in a class environment, it's easy. Oh, okay, I've got to lift more than this person at 6 p.m. Or I know I've got to be I've got to squat the most there. And it's like they're then sacrificing, say, movement quality just to say, oh, I hit more weight than them. But at the end of the day, is that really the goal? And which it might be. As this is where then again it comes into the fitness enthusiast and the competitive CrossFitter. For the fitness enthusiast, that is the goal. They want to be able to say, I'm Mr. or Mrs. Big Bollocks. I'm the one that hit the big. I'm the one that hit this weight today. No one's near me. Stuff like that, which is completely fine. Yeah. But if you're looking for long-term progression and to overall win at the game of fitness, say, then you have to think long-term and think grand plan rather than one session at a time.
Yeah.
So I think what would be quite nice is if we touch into using a workout as an example, because obviously we've discussed now strength pieces, but the workout is where the blurred lines come, I think, massively, because this is where, 3, 2, 1, go. In the old CrossFit mentality with the whiteboards, we're here to kill it and, get this workout done as fast as possible, or get as many reps as possible in a workout. Now, today's CrossFit obviously is different, because we're in some ways, because there's now the competitive side of things like that going on to say competition level. But in the class environment, let's just discuss the differences between how you'd approach a workout in a training outlook compared to a say competitive one.
Sure. So I think this boils down back to that stimulus point, where if we're training and we want to do a workout and come out of it better than we started it in terms of how good we are as an athlete, say you've got a set of 20 pull-ups as part of a workout, but you've probably got 15 good ones in the bank. You could hang on and do 20 unbroken, but chances are your technique would go to shit, especially if you're tired from other movements. And you might get out of those 20 pull-ups slightly sooner than if you broke it into, say, 10 and 10. But if you're looking for a stimulus that improves your pull-ups, you've probably missed it by doing 20 unbroken. Whereas if you do 10 then 10, you've actually accumulated the same volume of pull-ups with better technique. So from a motor pattern point of view, your body is now a more efficient machine because you've accumulated quality practice. It might mean that you're a few seconds slower and you might lose to your mate in that one workout, but you have achieved a better training stimulus. However, on the other side of the equation, if all you care about is winning, then doing those 20 unbroken and getting through the workout as quickly as possible is the right decision. So it all comes down to your intent as, do you care more about winning this workout right now, or do you care more about improving your capacity and ability with pull-ups long term? And as we always say, there's no right answer. It just comes down to your individual preference and priority as to how you want to use your class or you want to approach that workout.
That's true, because I guess at the same on the same note, you must understand where your thresholds are as well, which especially if you're someone, so what I mean by threshold is where you start to break down. So where you said 15 and 5, so you would have done 15 real perfect ones and then 5 sloppy, chin just over the bar, but you got it done. Now, this is where, whether you're a fitness enthusiast or competitive CrossFitter, say, I think there's still a room for understanding where your threshold is and say stopping early and breaking a bit early so you can still move faster. Because even though you might only be a fitness enthusiast, it's still important to have an awareness of your body. Because if you're, say, doing a set of 20 and breaking down straight, like doing that, and then it's now ruining the rest of your workout, you're not going to win, because everything else is going to fall to shit. Whereas if you know, cool, okay, maybe if I break this into a 12 and an 8, you're still focused on going as fast as possible, but you're now breaking it into a bit because you know you can do, say, 15 unbroken. So you're breaking smart and, say, pacing or setting yourself just below your threshold so that you know you can then move faster. Whereas then, I guess, if you come into the other side of things and then you talk about performing the movement for quality rather than for speed, you're then going to get a slightly different stimulus. And it's as you say, it all depends on the individual and your goal. And at the same time, as Ash mentioned, which was the thing of, there's no right or wrong answer, because it's who you are on the day. And I guess what happens there is you have to weigh up the thing of losing gains, and that's the thing is the trade-off that you need to make, which is, again, understanding, am I doing this workout for time to beat the person next to me, or am I doing this to get better?
Exactly. I think that's a really good point about the threshold as well, is that the stimulus can be skill or threshold. So again, having that awareness of what you're working on in the workout. So 20 reps could be a skill threshold for some. The skill could be the limiter for one person because their technique falls apart, or it could be that they're slow and they want to just go faster, in which case it's more of a capacity-based threshold. And knowing what you're going into the workout to work on, again, will impact how much of a training effect you're getting out of it. Which, it's a nice layer to add, I think, for the listeners.
So I guess if you're talking about, say, pull-ups, I think that's quite a nice movement to maybe discuss, because they can be done in so many different ways. And I feel that when it comes to a class environment, you have to understand, again, we're going to keep saying this, but understanding what your intent is of your grand plan. Like, are you competing in the day, or are you looking to get better? Now, if you're looking to get better, that might be completely changes and up and actually doing a movement completely different. So what I mean by this is, we have, say, the pull up. Now you have a bodybuilding style pull up where you have a focus on building your lats, building your biceps, building your back in general, becoming stronger at, say, the pull ups. Now, does that carry over to, say, the gymnastic pull up? Some may say it does, obviously, because you're strengthening your lats, you're strengthening your biceps, this thing, but it's a completely different position. So you're in a hollow style position where basically, if you're not too sure what that is, your toes are basically going to be, say, under your hands, and your midline is going to be slightly behind you, so you're in a dish shape. Compared to a bodybuilder, which may have a hinge at their hips, so their legs are kind of a lot more, say, dead legs and hanging, where it's focused all on the upper body pull and not using any lower body tension whatsoever. We then have the kipping pull-up and the butterfly pull-up, so ways of moving faster. So using gymnastic positions to move efficiently and move for time, rather than necessarily for quality of movement. So understanding what you want out of the workout, whether that's in the skill piece or in the workout itself of the day, then you might want to be performing the movement in a slightly different way. So you might be doing some strict pull-ups, because you shouldn't be doing, you're not at a stage in your training where you should be doing kipping pull-ups. Even if the workout is, say, 21, 15, 9 of pull-ups and burpees, right? You might still want to be doing 21 strict pull-ups. Yes, it's going to completely change the workout, but that might be better for you because you're training, because you're not at a stage where you should be doing butterfly or kipping pull-ups. And that's the decision you've made by saying, right, I'm not there today, so I now need to focus on what my goal is at this moment.
Yeah, spot on. And I think, that's another great example where, say you're doing 21, 59 pull-ups and burpees. If your limiter to your pull-ups improving is your strength, so your strength is what holds you back from doing pull-ups, then choosing to do them strict might give you a great training effect. Or say you want, if you've got an aesthetic goal and you want to build your back and biceps, doing the strict pull-ups will help with that from a training effect and stimulus point of view, but it's definitely going to be slower than doing kipping pull-ups. So you're completely sacrificing your competitive score, but it's making a step towards your actual long-term goals. And if you go into a class without the awareness of what your goal is, you'll just do what everyone else is doing or what you feel like you should be doing, potentially missing an opportunity to make progress towards your goal. And don't get me wrong, like, your goal might just be have fun, compete, have a laugh in the session, in which case just go with the flow, do what your mate's doing and have a laugh. But if you are more serious about making tangible steps forwards towards specific training goals, then always considering why you're doing the exercise in the first place might affect.
Exactly, because I guess it's when we need to think about the thing of, when it comes to those type of workouts, even if you're, say, doing it to compete against a friend, it's, you still want to be pushing yourself just outside of your comfort zone to make sure you're progressing, because you can still progress when you're competing against your friend. If you have an idea of what, say, where we talk about the threshold stuff like that, if you understand where you are and you're not just ending yourself, and you're so you can this is where I discussed at the start how it's like there's the gray area here, because it all kind of blends in quite in a way where it's quite hard to sometimes differentiate, which is why it's so important to as you just said there, understand what you're going into the session to do, because it then gives you a clearer picture of how to attack a workout. And as I said there, even if you decide to compete against your friend, you can still say, I'm still going to try and work my progression, because I'm going to stay just in my threshold rather than ending myself on those 20 pull-ups as the example. I'm going to do my 12 and 8 and still try and move faster. So it's understanding that sweet spot. And I think make sure when it comes to training, you should be competing against yourself. And I mentioned this to you earlier, and there's a really good quote that I saw from Jordan Peterson, which was, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And for me, I think that's such a strong, powerful quote, because it's like we get so easily swept up in our friends and competing against them. But they're in a complete. They might have slept better. They might have, like, they're stronger. So you're competing against someone that's just not you. And it's, and Instagram, it does it. Everyone sees these other people's lives and stuff like that, and always the comparison is a thief of joy, right? So everyone always looking for those things, and you sometimes forget and get swept up in your own world and then taken into someone else's. But you shouldn't be there. You should be in your own side of things. And when it comes to training, it's so important to have your goal of understanding your direction, and which was episode 6 for me. Is like it's crazy that even though it was our podcast and we filmed it, it really realigned a lot of my own personal goals, because it made me realize I was getting swept up in so many other people's say training methodologies and stuff like that. And it's like, I have a set way of training in which I enjoy. I like to experience other things. But it's so important to still remember what you're training towards, so you're still going in the right direction. And it's nice to say veer off every so often into different areas, because it gives you, broadens your training training experience, I'd say. So it's really good. But I think just to put it back into this part, which was, I think when it comes to the training, competing and testing, you're never wrong, whichever one you're doing. Just make sure you always understand what you're doing and what the intent is, because purpose and intent is so important.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing you just reminded me of before we move on, when you're competing against your mate, the two ways it can go are basically they're fitter than you and you push too hard too soon and you ruin your workout because you've just redlined and then you're just hanging on and you're not getting any useful training out of it. Or they're less fit than you and you coast it because you're going to beat them without actually challenging yourself. So because you're comparing to somebody else, you're not focused on the stimulus that's good for you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing the workout and actually listening to your body a little bit more and thinking, right, where is my fitness and how do I just edge out of that comfort zone, which is the optimal way for me to get fitter and probably get the best score as well. But because you're focused on somebody else and the external result, you end up doing yourself a disservice. And I think it's hard to do, but having a bit of awareness around that will ultimately mean you get better results and you beat your mate more often, funnily enough.
Yeah, it's funny because I instantly get a picture of, like I say, about a year or so ago, with my own personal training, and when I was training alongside Gus, the head coach at Whip. And now Gus is a very proficient CrossFitter. He knows his body extremely well. And this is about 2 years ago. Now, I wasn't as proficient, not that I'm great now, but I wasn't as good. And I got the nickname of Redline Rob because I'd be competing. I'd go in and I'd compete against everyone around me, trying to beat them, not kind of necessarily taking into account my own thresholds. So using Gus as the example, when I used to train against him, I'd say if we had a workout where it was, say, assault bike and pull-ups, I know that I could beat him on the assault bike because, one, I'm bigger and heavier and I'm just better at the assault bike. However, I know his pull-ups are better, but I'd still have the mentality of, right, I'm going to get off the assault bike faster, get to the pull-ups, move as far, and try and wait for him to catch up. Get back, say if it was 3 rounds, right? And then by the 3rd round, he'd then be getting off the assault bike at the same time as me and then finishing the pull-ups faster because I'm then gassed. So this is then where if all you're doing is competing, and if I never then change my focus, I'd always be losing to Gus.
Yeah.
Whereas if I then focus on, cool, okay, how can I get better at, say, pull-ups, since I know the assault bike is a strength of mine, I say, cool, I need to then get better at that. So I'd use the training stimulus at that. So when a workout comes back around, I can lose a couple of workouts, say, to Gus without realizing. But then when it comes to, say, that workout comes back around without him realizing, I might now suddenly be this don at pull-ups. And I can now do assault bike and pull-ups and be completely fine because I've trained the pull-ups.
Yeah.
So I think it can be so easy to get swept up in competing against your mate. And they say it's not wrong.
One thing you said there is perfect illustration. Is you said I was training against Gus, not training with Gus. And it just perfectly encapsulates that mindset, right? Like, I wasn't actually training with him. We were just training against each other, as if like the adversarial component is what it was all about versus the training component. And it's true. Like when you do stuff like that, that's what.
Oh, I think if you structure a session, say this is just like touching on this example there because it's really funny because it's like when say if we had a strength piece, we do some accessories and a workout. The strength piece, I know I'd most likely beat him. So without being a competition, there is no competition because I would beat him there. And I know he'd probably beat me in the workout side of things. So this is then where the accessories, you
win the accessories.
who wins the bicep curls? But it's like and with the accessory side of things, you'd just be chipping away. That's obviously you getting better. And then it comes to the workout side, and it's like, it's, as I said, it's so easy to get swept up in that I must now beat him. But it's like for Gus, it's not a competition because it's the same as the strength side for me, isn't the competition there. But then you put us in the workout. If Gus did that workout to say beat me, just beat me, and not say push himself, that goes into exactly what you said there about undercooking, and he's not then progressing. But then for me, I'm then trying to beat him, and then I'm not progressing because I'm overcooking, which is why Gus never really competes. He knows he doesn't need to compete against me, so he competes against himself and pushes himself. But that shows an experienced, say, athlete and experience at their own body and understanding, because it makes such a difference compared to, say, someone like me at the time was going in and I'll be like, I'm just going to beat him. So it's just you're not gaining the most out of that situation.
And it's the same in the strength, right? If you could coast and lift heavier numbers than him in the strength piece and wouldn't maximize your stimulus, and if he tried to max your numbers in strength, like he would probably hurt himself and not get a strength stimulus. So going back to what you said about knowing your threshold, knowing where your sweet spot to train and improve is completely independent of where anyone else is, because there are your individual bodies. So like you said, your sleep, your recovery, your nutrition, your training history, they're all different. So you can't expect to perform at somebody else's level on any given day. All that matters for improvement is the stimulus for you today.
Yeah. So I think we've covered that topic really nicely, the training, competing and testing. Yeah. I hope you guys have got a lot out of it. And I think just to reiterate the point, remember the goal of the session, whatever day it is, just go in with an intent rather than going in and getting swept up in someone else's intent. So because even if it is, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do well in the strength piece, saying I'm then going to compete against my mates in a workout. Make sure you tell your mates you're competing against them, so you're not doing the sly one. But also, when it comes out, that's completely fine to go in and compete against your mate and absolutely boss the day's workout. That's all good, but just go in with intent. Yeah. So, as always, guys, thanks a lot for listening. We really appreciate your time. Now, if you could please share these episodes if you did enjoy them, because it really helps us grow. You can find us on the usual places: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. When I keep not, they keep being up there unlisted, guys. So they are up there. I need to go. So my bad, but they are on YouTube. So as always, thanks a lot for listening, guys, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Cheers, guys.